The Fight the Trump Takeover protests were a series of demonstrations that emerged in response to the political climate under the presidency of Donald Trump, particularly during his administration from January 2017 to January 2021. These protests were fueled by various concerns over Trump's policies, rhetoric, and perceived threat to democratic norms. The protests began shortly after Trump's inauguration in January 2017, with many citizens expressing their opposition to his controversial immigration policies, including the travel ban targeting several predominantly Muslim countries. The Women's March, held on January 21, 2017, became one of the largest demonstrations in U.S. history, with millions marching across the country to advocate for women's rights and social justice. In the following years, the protests evolved to address a broader range of issues, including racial inequality, healthcare access, environmental concerns, and the rights of marginalized communities. The Black Lives Matter movement gained renewed momentum during Trump's presidency, particularly after incidents of police violence against Black individuals sparked nationwide outrage. Protests in response to these events often intersected with the anti-Trump movement, highlighting a collective demand for justice and systemic change. In 2020, the global COVID-19 pandemic added another layer of complexity to the protests. Many activists criticized the government's handling of the crisis, which they believed further exacerbated existing inequalities. The death of George Floyd in May 2020, combined with the ongoing pandemic, led to widespread protests under the themes of racial equity and justice. These protests were not only aimed at holding Trump accountable for his administration's actions, but also called for a more equitable and just society. The Fight the Trump Takeover protests also included efforts to mobilize voters in the lead-up to the 2020 presidential election. Activists organized rallies, phone banks, and social media campaigns to encourage voter registration and turnout, driven by the belief that defeating Trump at the polls was critical to restoring democratic values. As the election approached, the protests intensified, with demonstrators advocating for a peaceful transfer of power and condemning rhetoric that undermined the electoral process. Following the election, claims of widespread voter fraud led to further protests, including the violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, an event that starkly illustrated the divisions within American society. The protests under the Fight the Trump Takeover banner represented a significant moment in contemporary politics, reflecting deep-seated anxieties about the direction of the country. They involved a diverse array of issues and brought together various movements united in their opposition to Trump's presidency. While the protests were met with both support and criticism, they underscored the